Okay, it looks like we are live. Kia ora. Kia ora, everyone, and welcome into a Substack Live, a quick interview. We call them mini hoons here on the kaka because we all know that a collection of kaka are a hoon of kaka. So this is a mini hoon, and we're very lucky to have Connor Sharp with us on a mini hoon here to talk about the road of national significance, the one that's being extended. It's currently gone from Auckland to Warkworth, and the theory is it's going to go all the way to Whangarei. But we're very lucky to have Connor on today because he's published a very interesting piece, which I'm just about to put into the chat, so to speak, for you all to read at your pleasure. An article in Greater Auckland, the excellent blog about transport issues in Auckland and beyond. Connor, you've been waging OAA battle, jousting with NZTA, Waka Kotahi and the Ombudsman to find out what on earth is going on with some of these roads of national significance. How much are they costing? Do they make sense? When might they be built? What stage is the decision? These sorts of things. And in your article today, you've discovered a bit more. Could you tell us a bit more about what we can see from the documents that haven't been redacted and the ones that have been released? What we can see from the Road of National Significance story here to Whangarei.
Yeah, so the documents I got, which for context, I tried to get last year, and they actually refused to release everything, including the titles, which is super unusual. But the documents I got back like last week, I think, from the Ministry of Transport, they were specifically about the government's plans around the Warkworth to Tihana or Wellsford section of the what's called the Northland corridor or expressway, right? So this is probably the most expensive one of the roads of national significance. So yeah,
and just for any removal of doubt, this is not just a juicy road. This is 4 lanes, grade separated highways, your classic road of national significance, which you've discovered some numbers about how much it might actually cost. Could you go through those?
Yeah, so the total cost for building all the way from Warkworth to Whangarei is about $22 billion. And that, as with all projects, is probably going to go up. There's always cost blowouts with these things, especially these big projects like this. The first section, they've made quite an effort to redact every single, I guess, up-to-date cost in the documents. There's literally nothing that says it, but the last sort of public estimate we got was around 3.5 to 4 billion. So this is the first section between Warkworth and Wellsford. But the total corridor, which is 95 kilometers, is 22 billion.
$22 billion. So what does that work out per kilometre? And you also have worked out how much per resident in Northland.
Yeah, it's. I actually probably just double check the numbers. It's something like $230 million per kilometre. And again, that's assuming we're taking $22 billion. It could be a lot more, right?
Yeah.
If you look at something like Transmission Gully, I think the cost blew out to double. Like the overall cost is, I think, $2.5 billion. Originally, it was 800 million, then it went up to 1.2. Yeah, so this could be a lot higher. And then it wasn't per person, but it was per household, right?
Yep.
So I think if you took all the households in Auckland and Northland, it's about $30,000.
Yes,
household.
Perhaps the government should just offer each household in Northland $29,000 to save some money. But
yeah, I was going to say, coincidentally, if you, I worked this out, I was quite surprised. If you put a $30,000 solar and battery system on every single house, you would still have $1 billion left over instead of building this road. So
Yes, and you could probably give people some electric bikes along the way. What I was really interested in reading in your piece was the financing of it. Now, one of the great themes of this government, and to be fair, previous governments, is that don't worry, these new motorways will always be paid for by the people who use them. And we'll make sure that the government doesn't take on any debt to get these roads significance. What's the current plan, at least for the initial section that is not far away from breaking ground?
yeah, so the first stage, that's just to repeat, Warkworth to Welsford. They're set, or based on the timeline and the documents I got, they're set to be a deal is set to be signed in July of this year. Um, in terms of how it's financed, the government is looking to do what's called a public-private partnership. Basically, this is an agreement with a private entity who will raise the debt through the private markets, and we'll have a contract to sort of build, construct, and usually operate and maintain it for a set period of time, right? Um, the thing about the thing about the $4 billion, apparently, that is the highest, the most significant like cost for any PPP done in New Zealand so far, and it's so big, in fact, that the cabinet paper and the advice that I believe Chris Bishop and Nicola Willis got was the like private um, liquidity in the private sector wasn't enough to fully finance like 3 bids, I guess. So they go through a bidding process and have different what do you call people who want to get the contract. So what they seem to be doing is they're going to raise the money as like a government, a crown loan, right? So um,
So
not
effectively
yeah,
using the government bonds to help out the PPP, because it's clear
yes,
from the documents you mention here that obviously a PPP, in which a private organisation borrows money from a bank and from other fund managers, they do it with a much higher interest rate than the government itself, because the government is seen as a risk-free investment and has a very liquid market that people trust and can easily get in and out of. Whereas these bonds or borrowing by a particular consortium against a particular road has to offer a much higher interest rate. And what did you find in the official documents about just how much, how much more expensive it is to do it through a PPP?
um, yeah. So again, they have redacted every cost, so I don't have the exact numbers. But there is there are explicit parts of the paper that say that because we are doing part of this through a crown loan, the overall cost of this project will be cheaper, right? So we just know it's going to be more expensive. And even with the sort of crown, loan, um, in order to actually fund, I guess, the debt repayments as well as the payments that are made with the public-private partnership, they also need to increase funding for NZTA, right? So NZTA gets most of its funding through road user charges or like fuel taxes, fuel excise duty. Um, and so they've got planned increases for both of those starting from, I think, next year. So, and that's just to pay it with the Crown loan. Yeah, and that's only for Section 1, remember? So the other
Yeah.
thing, I was going to say, the other thing is that under former Minister of Transport, Simeon Brown, apparently NZTA has developed a strategy to deliver all 3 stages of the whole corridor by
Mhm.
2039. I haven't seen anything that says that's still not the plan. So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's essentially the project is going to be subsidised by contributions from the government and from road user charges nationally, because this is a bit surprising, given that the way these roads of national significance and other projects are promoted to the public is that there'll always be a toll, and the good ratepayers and taxpayers and road user charge payers and registration payers of Gore won't be paying for a big juicy motorway in or around Auckland, but that's not necessarily the case from what you find in this OAA. Is that right?
Yeah, no. So Matt Lowry does other writing for Greater Auckland. He did some calculations, I think, a year or two ago, and looked at what you would actually need to like fully cover the cost of these the roads and national significance. And I think to the toll would need to be something like $30 plus to actually recover the cost of just the first section, right, Walker to Wellsford. So I'm not sure. We had the whole thing about the $9 Harbour Bridge toll, right? Like, I don't think anyone's going to be paying $30 to use this road. So the idea that these projects can be recovered through the people who use them, it just doesn't hold up, right?
Particularly if you're talking here about four sections, and let's say they're $30 each, $120 just to drive on the road from Auckland to Whangarei. Maybe something a freight operator could pay and pass on the costs to the good people of Whangarei for
You,
their wet bix.
yeah, you've got to remember though the second and third stage of this are slated to cost something like $18 billion, right? So
There you
that
go.
toll would be way higher. Yeah. Um,
What I can't work out here is when you put these numbers in and you realize that the benefit to cost ratio will be, you know, barely one, and I can't imagine it could be even one with these sorts of numbers. How on earth this is going to get through any sort of reasonable investment case consideration at NZTA, let alone cabinet?
uh, I it's quite interesting. Like, so we kind of mentioned right when the Infrastructure Commission did their National Infrastructure Plan, they also have another process they were running called the Infrastructure Priorities Program, and basically this was just a way to do like independent analysis of different projects and business cases. None of the roads of national significance were put into this, right? So I think the other thing that was noted, I don't even know if there's so much I couldn't put everything in this article, but from what I understand, I don't think the business case has also gone through like other processes to um, I guess scrutinize it, right? So like through Treasury or anything. So I don't know what the business case is. I would have a lot of doubts about it. Um, it's probably the easiest way to say it. So
Yeah. And we know that the Infrastructure Commission it has also had lots of doubts about this project. Can you give us a sense of what they've said generally about these sorts of roads of national significance?
um, one piece of I guess advice I got through an information quiz last year said that if you were to build all the roads of national significance, which is something like $40 to $50 billion, it would basically double the value of the entire state highway network, which also doubles the maintenance and renewal cost, right? So
Mm.
that's the thing about these projects is if you build them, it's not just that you're spending, all that money building these projects. It's that now you have to maintain and renew them in perpetuity. And so if you go look at the excellent piece of work they did on the National Infrastructure Plan, where they're saying that we need to spend a lot more money on renewing and maintaining what we actually have, and inland transport spend less overall, and specifically less on state highways. I suspect they're not a fan of these projects. Um,
Yes, no, I think that's correct. The other thing that also struck me reading your piece is the climate policy assessments in this cabinet paper you've found. What was the climate policy assessment for this potentially $22 billion road with four lanes to encourage lots of fossil fueled cars and trucks to use it?
it was not required. Um,
Oh, oh,
yes. Um, the other part about this is, going back to like how this is funded. Um, it's also the kind of the longest period um, in terms of what a public-private partnership would be in terms of like the peak debt. Basically, it's like the period between constructing and I think when they start repaying, which means that this PPP is probably going to be. We don't know for sure because remember they redacted like all the details, but you're probably looking at like a 35-year PPP deal from when it's signed to when it get paid when it's finished. Whereas other PPPs are like 25 years. Um, and what that does is it sucks up all of the funding from NZTA in terms of like you know what's called discretionary. So like what they want to how many things they want to build, and like what other projects they might want to do. So this is basically assuming that all the money is going to go into like just this stage one of this project, and we aren't going to do anything else. If you have climate disasters, you're going to have to find that money from somewhere. Um, you would have to increase, taxes or road user charges or the fuel taxes to do other things. It's just sucking up so much money. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can't quite work it out. Now, so just to finalize, Connor, what are the sort of unanswered questions here that should be put directly to Chris Bishop, who's now the Transport Minister, to find out, and put some accountability around this? Because in theory, promises are going to be made before the election this year. There'll be a lot of national MPs in the north who'll be saying this is going to happen. It's, vote for us, you'll get this road. What are the sorts of questions we should be asking or they should be answering?
I think a lot of it, this kind of goes to the whole RONS program, but usually the RONS, the sort of corridor, the places where they want to build them, there's actually genuine things you can do to get benefits, right? And one of the biggest questions is what can you do that would address the vast majority of benefits and problems without bankrupting the country? And that's something that just for some reason is never asked of these giant highway projects, right? Um, one of the things about the say Highway 1 between Warkworth and Welsford is you have the Dome Valley, which actually used to be one of the most like dangerous sections of road in the country. And under the previous government, they actually funded a lot of, it's like a smaller project. I think it cost uh, something like $60-80 million, and it improved the road. It added, widened it, added median barriers, so it improves the safety. And if you spend, I think I worked it out. If you did the same types of improvements all the way from Warkworth to Whangarei, it would cost like 500 million. And not only is that delivered far quicker, it's actually affordable, and it means that we can go do that, in the rest of the country. So I'd be asking, why are we not doing these smaller, interventions, particularly when the Infrastructure Commission has said that we shouldn't be spending more money on state highway projects. I think it's also this is one of the other interesting things. Like you talk about political promises. This is one of the big things about the RONS is that they are kind of like a major promise made by the National Party, and you saw this when the infrastructure plan came out. Chris Bishop tried to softly walk back one of the worst RONS, which is the Mount Vic Tunnel in Wellington. And the very next day, Nicola Willis, the finance minister, comes out and says, they're fully committed to doing it, right? So it's you have the practical problem of this, but you also have the political problem, which.
Yes, it's a fascinating one. In my view, just to summarise from my point of view, this is a series of performative statements where real money is being spent on designing roads, where in reality no one really expects these things to ever be built. They're a useful thing to promise in election campaigns, and by the time even the first spade is in the ground, you're going to be well retired, having spent a couple of terms in Parliament, or maybe you got elected or you didn't get elected. And the reason they're so popular, these roads, is that in effect they increase the value of land around the connections to the road and at the end of the road. And there is a very private and very tax-free benefit whenever the land values rise around these motorways. And in effect, the whole country is going to pay for a tax-free capital gain on leveraged, often residential or newly zoned residential land in and around these motorways. It's a clear transfer of wealth from the public to private individuals owning land, and it's clearly not a sensible thing economically to do, even if you use the traditional benefit to cost ratios. And if you are going to do this sort of thing, you'd be doing it with government bonds. It's interesting the OAA, I think, revealed the fundamental problems with PPPs, which is that they create bonds and debt that fund managers frankly don't want and don't want to pay a small amount for. They want to be they want to have to essentially be subsidized to buy these bonds because they're not liquid, they're not standard, and they carry a whole lot of risks with them that a traditional vanilla government bond doesn't. Hey, Connor, lovely to see you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll no doubt talk again about this.
Oh, I was going to say there's one more thing I think is quite
Sure.
important to. Well, I was going to say two more things. So one, I did also work out that the project Walk with Tiana, if you're assuming high levels of growth, it still wouldn't even be needed until something like the 2040s, right? So we're doing this early. But the second thing is that this is another real question that needs to be asked of particularly politicians is the opportunity cost of doing projects like this. And it's, sucking up all the money, but it's also sucking up a whole bunch of workforce, which means that if there are other major projects or, let's say there's more extreme weather that kind of knocks out, assets that you have to either train up or like bring in new people like great expense to do these other projects, right? So it's not even that this project is a black hole in terms of funding. It's also uses just a massive amount of the workforce. So you can't do the other things that we actually do need, right? Like in terms of building, public transport or hospitals or, whatever it may be. So that's the other really, really important thing to kind of keep in mind when, especially when, you hear politicians promise stuff. It's like, okay, is that more important than, X other major project, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, resources are often limited and choices are made, and you'd hope that it's the voters making informed choices as opposed to vague ones that actually either don't turn out to be anything real or turn out to be very real and way too expensive and the wrong thing. But anyway.
Fairy tales.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Connor. Lovely to chat, and we'll talk again, no doubt.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Bernard.
Cheers.
Cheers.